Mr. Herman, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank the Londonderry High School Color Guard and the High School Ensemble. Before we, okay, for the folks at home that are watching, there are still seats, still room. You're more than welcome to show up, and we wish you were here. Okay, let me just introduce first the head table. At the head table, there's myself, John Michaels, the moderator, the assistant moderator, Bob Sauer, the business administrator, Peter Currow, school district attorney, Gordon Graham, the superintendent, Nick Greenberg, school board member, Steve Young, school board member, George Herman, school board chairman, Ron Campo, school board member, John Robinson, school board member, John LaFerre, school district clerk, Lynn McDonald, and school board secretary, Mary Wing Soares. And on the budget committee, just following along, Mark Oswald, John Curran, Don Jorgensen, the chair, Todd Junkus, Lisa Whittemore, Dan Lekas, and Richard Dillon. Okay, at this point in the meeting, I'd like to recognize Mr. Campo.
George, would you want to stand up for a second? You're going to have to. For the past 6 years, George has graced the school boards with his presence. He has offered his sound advice, his humor, but most of all, he's kept the children and the taxpayers in mind for each of his decisions. He'll be leaving the board in March, and I know this board and past board members will miss his presence and appreciate all the work he's done for us. Thank you very much, George.
Thank you all.
Thank you. While the remainder of the people are checking in, I'm going to go over what the school district rules are, and since I see a few more faces here than there usually are, I'll go a little bit more in depth. Under the laws of the state of New Hampshire and the Londonderry School District Charter, the moderator makes the general rules for the meeting. We don't use Robert's Rules of Order or any other formal set of rules. As moderator, I announce the general rules at the beginning of the meeting. A majority vote of a quorum of the meeting may change the rules. I also make rulings as we go along. Any ruling of the moderator can be challenged and overruled by a majority vote of the quorum of the meeting if the moderator is challenged before moving on to the next item of business. Non-voters. I ask that the non-voters sit in a separate area, and obviously if their vote's taken, the non-voters can't vote. Quorum. Some of you may not understand it, but the Londonderry Charter actually has a quorum. It may be new. I'm sure most of you don't understand that. Okay, the Londonderry School District has established a quorum for certain activities to take place at this meeting. This has recently been challenged in the Superior Court by 3 voters who wish to have the quorum declared illegal. The Superior Court has declined to grant a preliminary injunction to stop the moderator from following the terms of the school district charter. The court has said it will give its ruling on the quorum provisions sometime soon. Under the terms of the court's recent order, at this meeting, the quorum rule will be enforced. A quorum is 500 voters. Any vote to amend any article requires 500 voters to vote, and a majority of those to vote in the affirmative on any amendment. Once a quorum is established, the moderator will assume a quorum is present unless a quorum call or vote shows it isn't so. All warrant articles will be brought up for discussion in the order that they appear in the warrant, unless otherwise voted by a majority vote of the quorum. Since this is a deliberative session only, there will be no final vote on any article at this meeting. The only action the meeting can take without a quorum is to discuss an article. With a quorum of 500 registered voters, the meeting may also amend an article. Articles will be voted on at the election on March 8th of 2011. Amendments by the school board. Under the charter, the school board members can be recognized immediately prior to discussion of the first warrant article for the purpose of making and discussing one or more amendments to any of the warrant articles. If a majority of the school board votes for an amendment, the article shall be so amended. If a quorum is not present, the article as amended shall be discussed in the regular order and shall be on the official ballot. Once I start on the articles, the school board no longer can make an amendment. Amendments if a quorum is present. If a quorum is present in voting, they may, at the time the article is being discussed, make amendments. The article as amended shall then be on the official ballot on March 8th. I ask that all amendments be put in writing and given to me ahead of time. That's for convenience and making sure that what you want is actually what I say. Speaking. No one may speak unless recognized by the moderator. When recognized, for the record, please state your name, even if you've spoken before. Your comments should be directed to the moderator, must be limited to the article or motion on the floor. There can be no personal attacks or unduly long speeches. The moderator may at times allow questioning of a speaker, limited questions. There'll be no running debates. The moderator establishes the order of speaking. The usual order will be the proponent, the school board or a petitioner, a school board member, and then a budget committee member, then an organized group if there is one, and then an individual voter. If we have different mics or different places, I'll rotate among people. Limiting debate. The moderator will not allow any time of motion to limit debate until there's been an opportunity for discussion on all sides. Thereafter, a motion to move the previous question will be accepted. A motion requires a 2/3 vote to pass. If 2/3 want the discussion to stop, it will. If we are voting, the voting will be done by hand votes and raise your, raise your voter card. When any 5 voters request a written ballot before a vote, or when 7 voters request a written ballot after the vote is announced, but before the moderator moves on, a written ballot will be taken. A written ballot will use the alphabet here, and then you'll deposit it in facing our W.B. Mason ballot boxes. All right. At this moment, I'm not sure whether we have a quorum or not. So let us stop for one moment so I can see where we stand. To get a rough idea, you know, for those of you who are interested in, out in front of me here, there are roughly 550 seats. That's another roughly 130 seats. So we are going to be somewhere near a quorum. The question is which side. And I remind the voters at home that there's plenty of room here. If we have to put in more chairs, we will. Come on down. Just sort of as a follow-up, if we, and I don't know the answer to the question yet, how many we have, but if we have 500 people, you should understand that in every vote we take, if we take a vote, there has to be 500 people voting. So if you're here in the beginning and you leave, we lose the quorum. So just understand that that's, and if you are here and you don't particularly feel like voting, if we don't have 500 people vote, the vote doesn't count either, so. Sure.
Earlier you said that it would assume to be the quorum would be met until another vote was called, and now you're saying you're going to vote, so each voter is going to count?
Well, it depends on what we're doing. If we have a secret ballot, and the secret ballot shows there's not 500 people, you know, then we don't have a quorum. If we go along here and I go and ask for a show of hands, and it looks to me like there's the vast majority, unless somebody calls for a secret ballot, I'm not going to go and count everybody's hand. Okay. In the interesting world, for those who are making bets on the outcome, there are checked in at this moment 442 people. There are approximately 20 to come. So all of you out in TV land, we're going to start discussing Article 2, and if you get here, I am sure we will have a quorum. So we're going to now move on to Article 2. Mr. Robinson.
Just as a point of information, if you are at home and start driving over, tune into 102.9 on your FM dial, and you can listen on the way.
All right. Thank you. Okay. At this point, we're going to move on now to Article 2. Article 2, shall the voters of the Londonderry School District vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget for fiscal year 2011 and 2012, not including appropriations by special warrant articles or separate warrant articles, one of the following amounts for the purposes set forth in the budget posted with the warrant. A, $63,222,575, which is the school budget, or $65,974,054, which is the default budget. That is the article. Mr. Young.
So moved, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Campo?
Second.
Mr. Greenberg?
Yes. Peter, you want to hit the lights?
Pardon? Do you know how to kill him? You want? Okay. So I repeat again to anybody who's watching at home, we're within striking distance of a quorum, so we have plenty of parking and plenty of room.
All set?
All set.
Okay.
You're on, Mr. Greenberg.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming this evening. We'd like to make a brief presentation regarding our general fund budget, outline for you what our goals are, the actions that we have taken, and then respond to any questions that you may have. The proposed operating budget, we believe, protects our core programs and services as outlined in the district's strategic plan. It meets our mission and commitment to the students and community, we believe, in a fiscally prudent manner. It protects the investment in our schools, and staffing adjustments reflect enrollment and economic conditions. Our operating budget is reflected by a reduction in positions. 87 positions have been removed from our budget. Reductions in the operational expenditures. We also are using an Ed Jobs grant to leverage cost items for us and cover the cost of 10 teachers. And we have instituted, which I'll get into in greater depth in a little while, cost avoidance procedures and actions that have will result in $10,435,147 in cost avoidance for the upcoming fiscal year. When we started to put the budget together, we had to be cognizant of a number of issues. We knew our total revenues would be decreased by $1,537,486. The bulk of that is a reduction in state adequacy aid of about $1.6 million. That represents a 46-cent impact on the tax rate. As we go through the budget, you will see that the total impact for, as far as tax rate is concerned, general fund budget and the articles that are being presented is a total of 22 cents. So our actions and activities significantly reduced the deficit as far as the revenue shortfall was concerned by 24 cents. On the bright side, the district received $464,000 from federal job aids grant. Now, we've used this for teaching positions that we've been able to maintain in the budget. Now on to the operating budget itself. The proposed operating budget is $63,222,575. That represents a $317,480 decrease from the current operating budget. The proposed operating budget decreases salaries by a net of $951,218, or 2.6%. Benefits have increased $857,774, or 5.82% from the current budget. The impact on benefits is because of increased numbers of members of our staff who have gone on to our health insurance and increases in the rates that we now have to pay to New Hampshire retirement system. Moving on, the operating budget, salary reductions. I'm going to give you this information right here in full-time equivalents. Number of certified positions that have been eliminated from the budget, 15.8 FTEs, at a savings of $1,108,427. Administrative positions have been eliminated, the equivalent of 4.5 full-time equivalents, a savings of $434,492. Support staff and custodial staff hours and positions have been reduced and eliminated, which includes 222.7 daily hours at a savings of $709,907. Savings for the Job Ed Grant, which is the equivalent of 10 full-time positions, is $448,270. This is not a one-time savings that will come back as a boomerang effect in the FY13 budget. As our enrollment decreases, we made a determination that if our enrollment decreases the way we anticipated, those positions that we are funding with the Ed Jobs Grant would not be present in the FY13 budget. So in effect, by using the Ed Jobs Grant, we're able to garner almost $450,000 in savings a year ahead of time without negatively impacting the program or reducing class sizes or limiting by 10 teachers course offerings that we can offer the students. The total savings due to personnel reductions, reorganization, is $2,757,077, or 87 individuals. Let's take a look at how that breaks out. We're going to put it up because it breaks out into quadrants. The Ed Jobs Grant, as I talked about, garners a savings of $448,000 from our general fund budget. What we've done is assign designated certain teacher accounts to accommodate those 10 positions that we can fund with that money. Due to enrollment drops, we have a total of $550,458. Those are teachers at Moose Hill, the elementary schools, including 8/10 of an art, music, PE combined, and instructional assistants that are related to the positions that we have dropped, and also special ed assistants at the high school due to shifts in enrollment of our special ed population. The next block of positions, which garnered a reduction in our salary account of $1,417,823, are reductions that we made due to our perception of the financial situation in the country, the financial situation in the state, and what our revenue projections are. So those are all the positions that you see there, which include counselors, instructional assistants, additional summer curriculum work, teachers at the middle school, teachers at the high school, school-to-career coordinators, career assistants, extended year days, housemaster, vocational counselor, all are included in that block. The next block is what we call the reorganization block. And then we've done some reorganizations with administration. Several years ago, we started to take a look at additional efficiencies. What we're trying to do is look at our budget not on a year-to-year basis, but on a multi-year basis, and take a look at how, in fact, we can best deploy faculty and staff to deliver the services and programs that we feel are important for our students. So over the last several years, what we did, we hired assistant principals at the elementary school level who have expertise in special education. So instead of having 3 administrators at each of the elementary schools, we will have 2 administrators at each of the elementary schools, and the assistant principal will serve the special ed function that is presently being served by the directors of special ed in each of those schools. That reorganization will be taking full effect next fiscal year. We're also reassigning one of the present building level special educators to oversee the elementary programs, out-of-district placements at that level, and our in-district special ed programming. In addition to that, we are making some adjustments in staff by decreasing days and increasing days. We are also combining or compressing some of our tech assistants at the elementary schools as well as the middle school, and converting the library assistants, creating a hybrid position so that one of the library assistants positions will become a hybrid position to provide additional tech ed support at the schools. That reorganization nets a $340,598 reduction in the budget. Therefore, the reorganization, the decline in enrollment factors, as well as the financial factors and the use of the Ed Jobs Grant reduces our salary and benefit account by $2,700,000, I wish I could read it in the dark, $757,077. Thank you, Peter. Yes, I know. Salary reduction, salary and benefits, as anyone can understand, is the major part of a school district budget. Because we're a labor-intensive organization, that represents roughly 81% of our operating budget. We also had to take a look at other operational reductions. So we reduced non-personnel requests by $1.5 million. We leveraged federal funds to purchase supplies and equipment that will serve us not only this year, but in the upcoming years. We limited the purchase of textbooks as we're awaiting changes in statewide curriculum mandates, and over the last several years we have implemented a very sequential and focused textbook adoption policy and program, and we feel we can put off additional purchases for next year. We've reduced supplies and equipment, and as part of our wellness program, we are proud to say that over the last 2 years, our increases in health insurance in FY11 this year was 0%, in FY12 it's 3%, compared to the statewide trend of a 10% increase in health insurance. And we believe that's part of our wellness program and activities that we've taken. To give you a flavor of the impact of this, a 1% decrease or a 1% increase in health insurance rates is the equivalent of $75,000. Therefore, by being 7% below the statewide trend, that puts us $525,000 to the good as far as funds that we can reallocate and deliver services and programs for our students. Additionally, we feel very proud of our allied health and teacher staff who have stepped forward and have voluntarily given up $135,000 of their benefits that were earmarked for staff development activities and workshops. They did this in the best interest of the school district, and using that money has allowed us to save positions and programs for students. The top-level administrators in the district have also taken a voluntary salary freeze for the upcoming year. Aside from looking at cuts, what we also have put in place for a number of years is a concerted effort to operate as efficiently and effectively as we can. And we have had ongoing efforts to curtail cost and provide cost avoidance activities. So let me share some of those with you. The wellness program, as I addressed earlier, has saved us significant money on health insurance. Our energy conservation program, since its inception, has saved over $3.5 million, with an anticipated cost savings next year of $300,000. Our average energy cost per student is $129 less per student than the state average. In-house software development programs have also saved us significant amounts of money. And perhaps the most significant cost avoidance or cost savings for us that we also believe has provided an outstanding instructional benefit for our students is the development and the continued implementation of our in-house special education programs. Because of the implementation of those programs, next year there is a cost avoidance of $7,122,202. How did we arrive at that figure? We took a look at the students that are in our low-incident program and identified what the cost would be for tuition and transportation if we had to send those students out of district because we did not have those programs in place. We then net out the cost, our actual cost of running those in-house programs. That's how we arrived at that $7 million figure. What's also important to note is that the cumulative savings for these in-house programs from FY06 projected to FY12 is $30,855,675. So in essence, the savings that we have accrued during this period of time and going forward to FY12 in special education alone is almost half of the proposed budget for FY12. The total tax impact of our cost avoidance, in other words, the cost tax rate impact that we would have had without these services, is $3.13 per thousand. which we believe is significant and is representative of the efforts that the staff has put forward with the support of the board and the leadership of the board to operate as efficiently and effectively as possible. $63 million. Oh, by the way, all the board-sponsored articles, which will be discussed later on, Maintenance Trust Fund, the custodial agreement, and also the support staff agreement. Peter, you're ahead of me.
Oh, and while they're trying to get back together, just the, on the cable at the moment, it's scrolling that there are 465 in attendance, 500 needed, so we're trying to drum up business.
There you go. The total appropriations for the warrant articles in the general fund budget is $64,108,462. Total revenue decrease is $1,537,486. The proposed property tax rates for education, local, $12.54, state ed property tax, $2.33, for a combined total of $14.87. That's a 22-cent increase, or 1.48%. Therefore, a house assessed at $300,000 would be the tax bill would be $4,461, or an increase of $65 for the year. A home assessed at $400,000, the valuation tax bill would be $5,948, or an increase of $87 for the year. No, we're going to go right to the next one. It is legitimate to ask, as a consumer of educational services and a taxpayer, what am I getting back for my investment? What am I getting back for this $63 million bill? Let me give you just a little sample of the results of your investment in the education. A dropout rate of 0.25%, the lowest of any Class L high school in the state. 86% of the class of 2010 were accepted to 2- and 4-year colleges. 4% of the class of 2010 were accepted to training programs, and 2% of the class of 2010 entered into the military. We have been able to offer a wide variety of programs and services for our students. At the high school, we have 11 AP courses with an enrollment of 352 students, 21 honors courses with an enrollment of 917 students, 15 Project Running Star courses with an enrollment of 197 students. Project Running Star programs are courses that students can take for college credit. Multiple curricular and co-curricular activities. Articulation agreements with 22 colleges, resulting in $1,412,000 in scholarships over the next 4 years for the class of 2010. The last 2 years, our articulation agreements have netted our students $2,240,000 in scholarships at those 22 colleges and universities. We recently had a visit by the New England Association of Schools and Colleges for our 10-year assessment. We have not received the full report. However, they, in an informal readout to the faculty and staff, they made some of these following comments. It is evident that Londonderry High School is a mission-driven school. LHS is the most prepared high school in the 15 visits that the chair had attended. LHS has a culture and climate that all schools should strive to attain. The next question is, do you really get a return on investment? We believe you do. There was a recent study that was done by the American Progress Institute, and Peter is going to pull up a chart for you, and I believe you have that in your packet. What they did was do an analysis of 9,000 school districts across the country, make a determination based on investment, in other words, what was the cost per student, and what was the achievement that was garnered. Londonderry rated in the upper left-hand corner, which was best. In other words, and Peter can point to the in the upper quadrant, which showed a significant and excellent return on investment based on the cost in schools, and this was done with the 07-08, based on student achievement and cost per pupil. So here we have a national organization that has looked at 9,000 schools and rated us in comparison to the other school districts in the state of New Hampshire as being in the upper quadrant, getting an excellent return for your school dollar. Looking ahead, there are questions and issues. Adequacy funding for FY 2012. We have budgeted an adequacy figure, adequacy, which is the state's contribution to us, or adequate education grant, at the numbers that we have been given earlier this year. You may have read or heard in the paper that there is discussion about adjusting the adequacy formula, which might result in us getting additional adequacy funds. In other words, increasing the revenues that might be coming forward. In the 20-some-odd years that I've been working in New Hampshire, last 11 here in Londonderry, I've come to realize that what starts out at the beginning of the legislative process and what comes out and what ends in the legislative process is not necessarily the same thing. Though there is some hope we may get more money, we believe the prudent thing to do right now is to make assumptions and proceed in a manner in which is conservative fiscally based on the numbers that we have. If we are fortunate enough to get additional funds from the state, then we can address the issue at that time. But I believe all decisions should be made at this point in time based on what we know or what we have been told are going to be the adequacy figures, since things can change up at the State House in a nanosecond. And when you think you're going to have some money, it turns out you're not going to have some money. And we have yet to see a spreadsheet. I was testifying this morning on one of the adequacy bills, and one of the bills that was presented was actually changed this morning. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds as we move ahead. Another area that we have to take a look at is the state contributions to employee retirement. The state generally contributes, or had historically contributed, 35% of the cost towards employee retirement. 2 years ago, they reduced their contribution from 35% to 30%. And then a year ago, they reduced their contribution from 30% to 25%. Each 5% reduction is the equivalent of $200,000. Right now, that issue is in court. It's something that we're monitoring and keeping close eyes on. We have placed in our budget the assumption that we would get the school district, the state would pick up 35% of those retirement costs. Catastrophic aid, which we have budgeted for next year. Catastrophic aid is money that we get a year after we expend it, based on what is considered to be catastrophic special education costs. In other words, we receive some funds back for students that whose costs are 3.5 times the cost of an average per pupil, the average cost of a regular ed pupil, and the difference, and we get 80% of the difference from that basement to a certain ceiling. The state is funding that at about 60%, 62%. We've budgeted for that on the revenue side appropriately. Building aid, we are continuing to get. We may or may not get our full allotment. However, there is a moratorium on new construction in the state, so we're anticipating we will get the money that we have budgeted in the budget as far as building aid. That's the money that we get back over the life of the bonds for the construction projects that we have at a 30% level. And then I just mentioned legislative action. We have been very happy with our legislative representatives who have been doing a nice job representing us up in Concord and helping us garner additional revenues and support for our school district. In conclusion, we have a proposed operating budget of $63,222,575. Other articles that total $345,362. A property tax rate for education of $14.87. That represents $12.54 for local and $2.33 on the state. The proposed budget is $317,487 below the current budget. The proposed appropriations, we believe, will meet our core programs and services as outlined in our strategic plan and allow us to continue to provide our students with an outstanding level of service to them, giving them an opportunity to maximize their potential, and as our motto goes, giving our kids wings so they can fulfill their dreams. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. This time, I recognize Don Jorgensen from the Budget Committee. Have you?
Yes, I will turn this over to Mr. Jonkus for further.
Yeah, the Budget Committee voted in favor of the proposed budget of $63,222,575. Throughout this budget process, we had to balance the needs of the taxpayer with that of the impact of the programs and students this budget supports. If there was ever a year to be prudent in terms of fiscal responsibility, this was it. With state mandates and associated funding challenges, tax revenues from the state ever increasingly decreasing, and expenses always being a challenge, we feel the need to support this proposed budget and strongly recommend everybody else does the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the budget? Please give your name for the secretary. Sure. Okay. I think you're there. Yeah. Where do I face now? Yeah.
Glenn Douglas, 6 Overlook Ave. I'd like a clarification. I've answered questions now for over 3 weeks about a $900,000 cut. I think a lot of people are here specifically to stop the special interest group. Personally, I don't like special interest. I think everyone that is here has an interest, whether they like it or not, for or against the school. But seeing as how we have not met a quorum, what is the ramifications? I've heard that we need 501 people to stop any changes.
You need 500. You need 500 to amend the budget. So, for example, just making so you understand that if you wish to say, make a motion to take something out of the budget, add something to the budget, that requires a quorum. A quorum is 500 people.
Okay. And I'd also like to say, I don't believe there is anyone out here that's going to propose a $1 million cut, considering the state. But like I said, I have asked and been asked over and over and over and been told that we need to be here to stop the cut. So,
can anybody address? I can't address that. Somebody on the school committee can address a cut. Do you know anything about it? Mr. Campo?
Glenn, as I said in my email to you, the board had set up or I had asked the superintendent to look at a $200,000 cut. There was another additional board member that asked to see what $400,000 would look at. That was presented at the board meeting. The board decided to accept the $200,000 cut by the superintendent and passed on the additional $200,000. At this point, if I understand the process correctly, the article has been put into discussion, and the board cannot make any more changes. If that was your question, was the board looking to make additional changes? The answer is no. The board was not looking to make any additional changes. There is no there is no article or amendment to this that was presented prior to the reading of the article.
Right. Thank you. Just for, at the moment, it appears that the number who have checked in is 480. Yeah, Mr. Clark. I'd ask the TV people to keep putting on the screen.
Okay. Reed Clark, Stonehenge Road. This year I took a 6-week vacation during this period, and something happened during that 6 weeks that the number of people that came from 234 to 480, which is now 480, is pretty good. If someone could give me a ticket to somewhere for next January, I'd be happy to go anywhere, Florida preferably, but quite seriously, there's only 20 missing, and if you're still there and you still feel the urge to do your duty, and I call it your duty, I've been here my family's been here since 1700, and we've been here to every one, so as many as we could attend. So if there's still 20 of you that are eager to come and listen, come on and make it 500. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Reed's only been here since 1850. His family was here before that.
My name's David Ellis. I've got 3 items here that I'd like to hear the school board maybe explain fairly briefly. The school to career, school to community counselling is showing a very substantial drop, about a 7-to-1 drop, basically because the staffing appears to have been removed. This seems counterintuitive when it's harder and harder for anyone to find a work. The next one is the psychological counselling, which shows a 3-to-1 increase in staff costs with not much explanation. And the last one is when many of these programs are showing staff reductions, the athletics is showing a 4.5% jump in staff costs. I'm not looking for a great dissertation, but maybe someone could shed some brief light on it.
Somebody like to? Mr. Greenberg.
Yeah, I can respond. The school to career counselor, what we've done is shift responsibilities. We had a school to career coordinator. We've eliminated that position. We're shifting some of the roles and responsibilities to some of our guidance counselors, as well as providing some of the activities for internships. We will also slide over to another teacher in the district. Okay. Your second one had to do with psychological services.
Psychological counseling.
What we did was we had 3 school to community counselors, one at the elementary level, one at the middle school level, and one at the high school level. What we've done is shift some of the responsibilities at the high school to one of our assistant principals, and we have also gone to a contracted service model. We included $60,000 in that, so that if we have students that require some intensive counseling or redirection because of drug or alcohol, we will use that particular service to allow that counseling to take place or redirection to take place. We are very fortunate at the high school level in that one of our assistant principals is a guidance counselor by training. And we're going to also shift some of those other responsibilities to some of our other counselors. What we tried to do is we looked at roles and responsibilities, looked to address it, see what levels of expertise we had on the staff to shift some of those responsibilities, and then for some specific areas that we felt contracted services would work, and we decided to go in that direction. And the 4% increase probably in athletics is a result of increased costs for staffing. If it's the salary account, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there were 3 salary accounts.
Yes. And also too, part of it has to do with increased costs that we have to pay for referees. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
I'm Madeline Heath DeMule from Boyd Road, Londonderry. I'm trying to phrase this in a question because what I have is more concern and hysteria, to be honest. I know many members of the school board very well and the superintendent, and I've worked very closely with the school district as a volunteer on many committees for the past 20 years. I moved to Londonderry with my husband because of the form of government, because we believed in this kind of meeting and that more informed voters would make good choices. And we believe very strongly in education, and we wanted to see good schools. I think that this has been an exceptionally difficult year for all of you, and I think you've had to make extremely difficult choices. And I think that's being minimized in some way because we don't want people in the community to be concerned about the schools and maybe any changes, costs that some of these things are going to have. But I think when we look at changes in budget, we need to look at cost benefits. And I think that we haven't begun to see what these shifts in responsibility, and I think you've done an excellent job, Nate, in trying to find the right people to be able to take on more responsibilities. But I think that those positions that are being cut, school to career, drug and alcohol counselors, special education coordinators, those were all people who worked pretty hard in the district, from my experience, and who performed probably way beyond the level of one person. The library media people. I never saw an underworked assistant principal, and I've been, like I said, around in these schools for quite a while, my own children having been through these schools, and also being very active. But I'm really concerned about the long-term outcome, and I don't want people to think for a second that this $2.5 million cut or whatever it comes to is without cost. I think that delivering the curriculum is one thing, having access to it is another. Children who are dealing with alcoholic parents or drug-addicted parents or who are themselves having drug and alcohol problems are not going to be able to access a curriculum without appropriate services. On one hand, this really frustrates me because it's not the school's job. I think it's the community's job. On the other hand, we do not have a community that supports those kinds of programs. So you're talking about individual students who will not be able to access that curriculum, in my opinion, and I'm involved in that field professionally. Special education, the costs everywhere have gone up because 20 years ago, we couldn't teach certain kids how to read. We didn't know how to do it. 60 years later, 60 years of reading research, we can teach them, but it costs a lot of money. It costs specialized training. Children that were born at 4 pounds, 3 pounds, they didn't survive. They do now. It costs a fortune to educate them. But some of them actually become high-functioning members of society. And the other thing is, special education isn't somebody else's kid. It's your kid after a high fever or a car accident. It's your neighbor's kid. It's your daughter's child, your future grandchild. It's 15 to 20% of our population, and most of them are small learning disabilities that can be really overcome by being taught the right strategies. These are not easy decisions to make, and I think what upsets me, and maybe it's a child of the 60s, but if we were standing up here talking about $2.5 million in cuts in music and art programs, we would have the 500 quorum. Every time I went to a school board meeting when we talked about cutting those programs over the years, the board meeting was packed. But these aren't the kind of parents who can stand up and say to you, my child is going to be affected. And what I'm asking the school board to do is to make sure that there are measures in effect to see what these cost-cutting measures have for an impact. Our special ed population does not perform at a level of adequacy according to testing. We do not perform as well as other school districts in that area, and we are cutting that department massively. Those aides, I'm a proponent of not using a lot of one-to-one classroom aides for special education, but I'm a proponent for using small class sizes with highly educated teachers, which is what the research shows us works. The difference between most special education programs that are out-of-district placements and in-district public school placements is class size. If we have 25 kids in a class, or even 18 kids in a class, and a third of them have special needs, that one teacher has to be able to educate them. If you're in a private school program, usually it's the class size that increases the cost of the education. And it's the level of education of the teacher, which is the other thing we are cutting. We are cutting costs to educate our teachers, to keep them current with current education techniques. And this is an area that's growing constantly. We now know how to better educate all children. So we're willing to give all this up in the effort to cut costs. The problem is not over expenditure. When I first came into the district as a volunteer, I wanted to know where the petty cash fund was so that I could start a little newspaper. There's no petty cash fund in the school district. There's nothing. I have to say, in all the years that I was involved, I did not see waste. I saw people run out of paper. I saw computers that were antiquated. I've seen a school board work unbelievably and a superintendent to cut every ounce of fat. This cut is strictly because we have been denied funds from the state, because the federal government has cut funds. It's not because the school district spends too much and that we have this Cadillac program. Our costs per students are very low for the kind of education that we get for our children. And I think that everybody in this audience needs to be really aware of that and really respectful when they speak about that, because the last thing I'm going to say is that I've spoken for many years about civility, and I think that no matter where you stand on this debate, we all have an ultimate responsibility to educate ourselves about the facts, not the crap that gets slung back and forth, and to speak with dignity and respect, and to truly listen with an informed mind and make good decisions. This had to have been an extremely difficult year. I personally regret not showing up at more of those meetings, but you know, I think over the years I realized that it's people with special interests that do show up. Unfortunately, like I said, the real dedicated people in this town are the people that are sitting up there, the elected officials, the town councilors, because it takes a lot of time and energy to go through those budgets. I'm going to stop my speech with just saying thank you, but also with a real plea to please put into some place some real measurements of the impact of every one of these cuts to see if that school to career program, if that library media program, if those special ed programs don't end up costing you in some way. If it's not financially, then maybe it's in the life of even one student. I'd like to know about that next year. Thank you.
My name's Amy Morello. I have a very simple question, and I wonder if anybody out there is wondering the same thing. I'm not familiar with all the processes that take place, so I hope this doesn't seem too simple, but I understand that for a quorum, you do need 500 people. So if we do not reach 500 people, does that mean that all of us here are observers at this time and you are all voting on this process or recommending this, and what you establish then goes on to vote? So we simply are observing and don't really have a voice to make changes to this at this time? Is this what I'm understanding to be true?
You're asking a process question.
Correct.
And a process question is that under the process, if there is not a quorum tonight, and there does not appear to be, that this cannot be amended. It can be discussed but not amended, which means that what's before you will be on the ballot on March 8th. If there was a discussion here and there was a quorum, you could amend it. For example, let's suppose you thought something should go down or up in the budget, then you could change the number.
So the budget that you're proposing right now, the current, the
Correct.
budget cut of, that
Yeah.
was proposed and outlined in detail by Mr. Greenberg, the one he's discussing with all those cuts is the budget that's then going to be voted on right now. There's no way that.
Let me just, let me answer, because as in all things in life, it's not quite as simple as that.
Okay, I
There-
just want to understand.
There are two budgets that will be on the ballot. The two things that will be on the ballot.
This is the school board
I'm
budget.
telling you, the school board position is going to be on the ballot, and there's going to be a default budget. So there will be two, and if there's no quorum, you cannot change the school proposed budget.
Oh, okay.
If there was a quorum, you could change it. But part of the issue, part of the reason for these meetings is that whether something gets changed or not, the budget is a bottom line budget, and if you have concerns about things, you are expressing your concerns to the people that are going to be running the school during the course of the year. So if you ask the question procedurally, can you change it? No. Is there some value to you saying something here? Yes. Is there more value if you could amend it? Yes.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Young.
Just to, so we can understand the options, if we do not reach a quorum and there's no, there are no amendments to the budget, the superintendent discussed this evening $63,222,575. That'll be the school board budget, which would be moved to the ballot. You'll have two choices when you go into the voting booth, or you get to vote as absentee ballot. And that was one of the choices, and your other choice will be the default budget, which will be $65,974,054. This is just talking about the large part of this, which is the main budget. So in the voting booth, behind the curtain, or by absentee ballot, so everybody gets to vote, you get only one of those two choices.
Thank you. Ma'am?
My name is Nancy Hendricks, 14 King John Drive. I have a couple of questions. There are a lot of people here this evening that we've not seen before, and I'm wondering if you can comment on the process to which you go through to get to this budget, point number one, because I know it's painstakingly detailed, but a lot of us may not know exactly what goes into it to arrive to where we are today. And my next question is, I'm wondering if someone can comment, Nate, you might want to address this, or your assistant, how these cuts that seemingly go fairly deep this year are going to affect the way we're delivering curriculum in the classroom. Thank you.
I'd be happy to respond. We start the budget process in August, where we take a look at our revenues and we begin to do projections. Our administrators then work with faculty in the fall. We then have a series of meetings with the administrators at the district level to take a look at, based on our strategic plan and what our priorities and goals are. We then have a series of meetings with the school board. We present them the budget right before Thanksgiving. Some kind of look at it as a second turkey right before the holiday. Then from December through January, we go through a series of hearings and meetings along with the budget committee. We go through the budget in detail, and decisions and choices are made along the way. We then have a budget hearing, at which point, again, the community has an opportunity to chime in on the budget. The board then takes action to move the budget and the warrant articles to the deliberative session. That's where we are now. I would say on the administrative side, there's a good 300 to 400 hours worth of work that goes into budget development. The board certainly puts in a significant amount of time reviewing the budget, not only in public, but also with their books at home and reviewing the material and so forth. So I think that answers question number one. Question number two, I believe, was what impact do we believe this will have on the educational program and services? One of the things that we really truly tried to do was maintain the same program level and services that we have. And one of the ways we had to do that was by adjusting some roles and responsibilities for people. One of our key goals, and I felt was most important, was maintaining certified teachers at the elementary level with students in class sizes very comparable to what we have now. So that at the primary level, we're talking 19, 20 kids a class. At the intermediate level, no more than 25. I think at Matthew Thornton, there's probably, in their 5th grade, it's one of our higher classes at 25. We did reduce or eliminate from the budget aides in grades 3, 4, and 5. We left those instructional assistant hours for grades 1 and 2, with the proviso that the principals could redistribute those hours as they saw fit. In addition, we ran a pilot program this year utilizing special ed teachers and the special ed assistant and having them go in the classroom to provide support and assistance, which I think is part of what Madeline was talking about too in delivering those services. In addition, we've maintained the level of reading teachers. We also have Title I people or educational support people that also work with kids individually or in groups or in the classrooms. So when we looked at all those services combined, we looked at instructional models that we could put in place that would allow us to run our 3-tier reading programs and provide those services and programs that we feel our kids need so that those kids who are accelerating could continue to go, because we have not touched the special curriculum people at the elementary level. Adjustments we made were based on enrollment. We kept all the instructional assistants in the kindergarten, so there's instructional assistant in each of the kindergarten classes. And we kept those classes small too, because working with kindergarten kids, everybody knows 5-year-olds, it's like herding cats. So you gotta have some hands-on stuff. We reduced by 3 positions at the middle school. We felt the adjustments we made were okay. A minimal impact would still allow us to run programs and services we are. It does impact the strings and instrumental program in 7th grade, which was beginning strings and instrumental. We had a very small enrollment, but kids who are interested in beginning strings and instrumental can still take it in 6th grade. Those kids who have already taken in 6th grade can continue on. So we felt comfortable there. The reductions in classroom teachers at the high school will be specified based on enrollment and course selection for our students. We have the ability to offer 80% of a position or 20% of a position or 40% position. So we feel comfortable there that we'll be able to offer basically the same offerings and opportunities that we have for students there. Some of the other adjustments we made regarding school to career, we feel that we have the guidance staff in place and people in place that will be able to continue with that program. Does it mean that people are going to have to do more things? Yes, it does. But we made the considered judgment. We try to make a balance, do a balance this year between delivering the same level of programs and services, perhaps in a different way, and also trying to be fiscally responsible and looking at how we were spending the money and how things were going and what the economy was. We believe that we prune the tree instead of chopping it down. Therefore, as the economy moves ahead, those branches can flourish as opposed to killing them. All right? Would there have been different decisions we might have recommended to the school board and the board might have considered if we were more flush financially? I will tell you the answer to that is yes. Okay? But at the same time, looked at some of this stuff as an opportunity. We saw declining enrollments at the elementary level. It created some opportunities for us to utilize administrators who had a particular background to allow us to give them those responsibilities because some of their assistant principal responsibilities had decreased because of the number of students in their school. I'll give you a perfect example. When I first came here, Matthew Thornton had close to 1,000 students, right? We're going to be down to about 600 plus next year. They had 3 administrators at that point in time. There's no doubt that paperwork, administrative rules, and regulations have just exploded since then, all right? However, it was a considered judgment on our part that with 2 administrators in that school, one with having a specialty in special ed and having a special ed person overseeing on the elementary level, we would be in a good position. We did not decrease the number of special ed assistants except at the high school based on enrollment drop. We kept our special ed staff. We're using IDA grant money to support those programs and deliver those programs and services. So I think we're in a good place. We will monitor it closely, and if there, in fact there are any issues, we'll come back to the board. But at the same time, I felt there was an obligation on our part when we have needed more staff because enrollment went up or we had specific issues in special education, the board was considerate, willing, and the community supported it. We felt we had an obligation on our part when enrollment dropped to, in fact, return that, even though it's very difficult for us internally to say goodbye to some of our faculty and staff. It's not a good time for us internally in that way.
So you're confident then that given these cuts, that we will still have services in place to capture even regular ed students that are right on the cusp.
Yes.
We don't want them falling through the cracks, particularly with reading and math.
Yes, and we've put, we have been working with what we call professional learning communities, which is working with our teachers to help them identify trends, look at data, look at instructional strategies that help to improve the delivery of services and programs for kids, and I think we're in a good place with that. Is it going to be harder?
Yes.
Yes. Do we all have to step up? Yes. But we felt that it was important for us in light of what the financial situation was to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Robert Spiegelman, Windsor Boulevard. First, I'd like to thank all of you, particularly those of you who are citizen volunteers, professional staff also, for all the effort you've put in this year, and this hasn't turned into a soap opera, and in general, people seem pretty satisfied with what you've come up with, so thank you. Secondly, I don't know if there are 500 people here.
Not yet.
No, okay, so one of the things I was going to is there's no such thing as making a motion to call the question then, but to encourage, when I came up there was nobody here behind me in the line, but I would encourage you then to do the equivalent of calling the question or whatever, Mr. Moderator.
Well, what I will,
Get through the line.
what I'll do is I'll wait to the end of the line and we'll, okay? Yes, sir.
Don Moskowitz, 7 Tokenell Drive, and before I ask the question, please be aware, depending on your response, you could end up in a letter to the editor. Okay. This is a question I have for the, I was going to propose it as an amendment, but no sense in doing that. But I have a question for the Londonderry School Board and the Londonderry School District Administration. Are you willing to evaluate the feasibility of bringing in students from nearby communities? Subject students would be enrolled in the Londonderry schools with tuition payments made by the sending communities.
Mr. Greenberg?
Yes. We have from, in the area of special education, we have accepted tuition students. We have also accepted a small number of tuition students from school districts who do not have a ironclad agreement with a high school. And so that's my response to you on that particular question. The issue that you have to address when you look at tuitioning students in is where is your break point. There are certain, you can accept a certain number of students and not exceed your own internal costs and have that cost you more money. But I think that's something that you have to be very careful with, and I'll leave it at that.
And that's why I stated, would you be willing to evaluate the feasibility of doing this?
Sure.
And what this would entail, of course, would be a financial analysis, a logistics analysis, and you'd have to come up with a pro forma P&L documenting all this. And obviously, if we're going to lose money, we're not going to do it. But it might be feasible to generate revenue, and if you have what I would call income, revenue less the expenses, then it might be something you might want to look at. And I have another question along those lines. Have you looked at generating revenue through any fundraising efforts? I don't know if you're allowed to do that, but I'm talking about general fundraising efforts that we see that go on within the community. Yeah. I'm hopping on the revenue side of things, because if you can generate the revenue, then obviously you might not have, eventually down the road, you might not have to lay off as many people.
Absolutely. There has been significant amount of revenue generation, particularly for extracurricular and co-curricular activities. So that that has been the major focus for the revenues to offset costs. If you look at the amount of money that the boosters have generated, that's pretty close to 40%, I believe, of what we've budgeted for athletics, and it far exceeds it probably on the Friends of Music side. But as far as setting up a foundation to assist in revenue generation for the schools, we haven't done that. But if you would like to participate and help us set up a foundation, I would be more than happy to work with you on that.
Well, I'd possibly consider that. I am a past state treasurer of the American Legion, and I do have an MBA and a pretty decent financial background.
There we go.
But the only thing is, the only thing is, it would take away from my letter writing. So I don't know if you'd want me to do that.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir.
For those, I said, Mr. Karen, you may not have heard that I was going to cut it off after the lady in black, unless I sort of get a sense that people would just soon us keep going. I'm sorry.
My name's David O'Rourke. I live at 8 Jason Drive. I have two questions. Number one, if everybody here doesn't want any more cuts to the budget, should they all get up and walk out?
Well, I will answer a procedural question. I will not answer.
I'll take that as a yes. Being a lawyer, I'll take that as a yes. But the more important question is, if we, the voters here in this town, voted for the default budget, what would y'all do with the money? And I'll leave and let you guys, like the call-in guys, I'm going to go sit down and let you guys answer the question.
I like that question. Because for 8 years, I've served on this board. I'm at I'll be starting the third year of my third term. And since I've started on the board, we have presented an at or below default budget. And I've always thought about that. What if the voters went to the polls and voted for the higher number? For me, and my 1/5, I'm not sure if Dan Bieber's here, but that was his saying. For my 1/5, I would look at what we did to prepare the budget, the hundreds of hours that the superintendent put in, the time that we've reviewed the budget, and I would do my best as a member of this board of directors to manage the district in the following year as we expected that it would be managed. The reality is, we could spend the pot of gold. The district doesn't have a pot of gold. The district has to return all of the money that we that we don't spend to the taxpayer every year. So I guess that would be sort of a fund balance, a once-in-a-lifetime fund balance for the school district. The town side has a fund balance every year. So for me, I would still manage the district the same as if we were voting it, but you all can come to the school board meetings and try to fill the Moose Hill Conference Room and change our mind.
Ma'am, your name?
Yeah, my name is Debbie Villars. That actually was my question. Where does the default budget come from anyway? Is that without the money that the state isn't giving us, or?
The default budget is the budget of this year's budget. All contractual costs associated with it put into the budget. All one-time costs that we had last year is removed from the budget. So it's really last year's budget plus any contracts that we have or costs that have increased there minus any one-time costs. If we replace the boiler for $400,000, that would be subtracted. But if the teachers' contract, their monies would be in it. So the state defines the default budget for us.
So if the voters were to vote that, what you're saying in essence is it really doesn't change anything for this year?
No, that's not true. If the voters voted in the default budget, we would have additional revenue.
Right, but it doesn't mean that necessarily some of these people would get their jobs back, or?
I would think that we would have to act prudently, as Steve mentioned there. Superintendent said there were some things he would do if he had a pot of money there. Yeah. He would probably bring some of them forward, but we do have a declining enrollment that we would reduce those numbers there. So I think it would be a effort on the school board's part and more on the administration's part to see what we would want to bring back and what we wouldn't want to bring back. It wouldn't be a wholesale, let's go spend $65 million.
Right, but would it, and this is all theoretical, of course, but would that be things that would be discussed at future school board meetings so people could come and influence that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Ola Lassard. I'm at 12 Ashley Drive in Londonderry. I had a couple questions and I guess comments as well. And I appreciate that this is obviously a very difficult budget year, and I'm sure that you have worked very hard to make cuts that you had to make. But frankly, the numbers and what I'm seeing in this report does concern me. As a parent and as a taxpayer and a member of this community, my husband and I moved here 12 years ago because of the schools. And I would probably be able to poll people in this audience and find out how many people moved here because of the excellent reputation of our schools. And I would like to think that we would maintain that reputation, and I'm not suggesting that any of you is doing anything to try to not make our schools as fantastic as they've been. That being said, you know, I look at some of these things, and my children are in elementary school. I have a 3rd grader and a 5th grader. And they have somewhere in the mid-20s of kids in their class. And when you come to me as a parent and you say, we're cutting those assistant teachers, I'm very concerned about that. And I don't have a child in special ed. But I agree that all of those kids are our kids. And I sit in the lobby at Matthew Thornton School once a week, and I watch those special ed directors and teachers and assistants work with kids. And the fact of the matter is, we need those people. We need those positions. And I think these cuts are already too much. And I know that there is some talk, and I realize that's not reflected in these budget numbers, but I, have been looking and reading and hearing, and I don't know exactly what the whole thing is, but, that there is some effort to further decrease the budget even from here, and over my dead body, absolutely not. I mean, this is too much as it is, and I hope that that doesn't go one step further, because we need these people here, and one of the questions that I did have for you, again, I don't have kids in special ed, but I do know how hard they work, and I see the director of special ed in my school, and with all due respect to our assistant principals, who I'm sure have wonderful backgrounds and will make every effort, the depth of experience that is required for that position is such that I'm not sure we're there without that person. And that worries me. So my question is, I know that some of the cuts that you've made have been based on decreased enrollment in general in the town. And I'm curious as to whether, when you look at special ed, is there a comparable decrease in enrollment in special ed that reflects, that makes these figures make sense? And I don't know the answer to that.
On the special ed reductions, the only special ed assistant reductions that you see are at the high school, where it was a result of enrollment. So there have been transfers of special ed assistants or transfers of special ed teachers based on enrollment shifts. So there have been no reductions in the teachers and or the assistants, except for the 4 at the high school, right? So in the delivery of those services right in the classroom or in support, there has been no adjustment. What has been an adjustment has been at the administrative level, right? So, and please understand, I have a very special place in my heart for special ed students, as my daughter is developmentally disabled. She has Downs, and I know how important her program and the services she received and how that affected her life in a very positive way. And it's one of the reasons we have been so strong in promoting our in-district programs to provide our kids with an opportunity to stay in their neighborhood schools or at least their community. So as far as the special ed programs are concerned, those have been the only reductions, the 4 special ed assistants and the reorganization of the special ed directors' positions. Other than that, we have not made changes in special ed. One of the models that we're looking at that we think and actually have been implemented that we believe has worked well has been at Matthew Thornton, where we have a special ed teacher and a special ed assistant going into the classroom. So if there are some youngsters who are coded and working in the classroom, not only do you have the regular classroom teacher, you have the special ed teacher, you have the special ed assistant. So I think it provides for a really good instructional model.
For those of you who might have an interest, we have crossed the 500 number in terms of people who've checked in.
Well, I would just say, I mean, I will wrap up and give the next person her turn. This is already too much in my opinion, and I think as a community, and now we have a quorum, you know, we really need to look at this, and then we certainly need to hold the line, but I think a lot of the cuts you've made, while I'm sure they were hard to make and you've made them with the best judgment that you can, this is not the area to cut our schools. I think every aspect of our town government obviously is trying to find ways to save money, and I appreciate that. But I find it very hard to believe that this is the place that we have to come for this significant kind of cut. And I hope you to all take that into consideration. Thank you.
Will you let me speak?
I had said when we did not have a quorum that we were going to stop at that point, but if I get a sense to keep going, we'll just keep going. All right, you're on.
Point of order?
Pauline Karen, 369 Mammoth
Yes.
Road.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Point of order.
Sure.
Now that we do have a quorum,
Now we have had over 500 people come through the line.
Assuming we still have a quorum,
And I consider it a quorum at the moment.
If those in our legislative body attending disagree with the moderator, they can call for a vote.
Correct.
And overrule him stopping people from talking.
Yeah.
Okay?
All right.
At a
Ms. Karen.
prior school board meeting, I asked how many special ed students there were in the district, and I was told there were 800. How many of those 800 are from out of district?
4.
Do they pay tuition?
Yes, they do.
How come it doesn't show in the revenue funds?
It does.
Where?
Local revenues.
Local revenues.
Local revenue?
Yep.
That's not local revenue, that's from out of town.
Local revenues, revenues that we receive from areas other than the state or grants.
Thank you. Another thing, if you look at the school budget, only 19% of the budget goes for the students. 81% goes for the employees. So if you want to cut, I think you kind of have to cut employees because the kids are not getting that much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. You're on. Yep. Mr. Robinson?
Excuse, go ahead, John.
I'd like to say I disagree with that statement. I think that
No, we're not going to have a running debate.
I think that if you look at that 81%, that money is going to teachers. Teachers are what we give the students. Teachers are the value drivers in the district. I simply cannot accept the idea that teachers aren't the contribution to students because that's where it comes from.
I didn't mean all teachers, but there are administrators that don't teach, and their jobs could be assigned to different individuals because they're the high-paying salary people.
Again, if we'll go back there, if you take a look at the RSAs dictate that we have certain positions here to get state aid. Example is that for every 500 students, we need an assistant principal. We need a library media person. We need a superintendent. We need a business administrator. They're set forth in the RSAs. So if you look at it, the state has dictated what administrative we have there. There are administrations that we put in the districts that help and move the process. And that, we can have that discussion here, or we can have it at a school board meeting, and we talk about that a lot at school board meetings. Our job is to deliver curriculum to the students, and that is the purpose of the administrators. The state requires us to have certain administrators in place.
Okay. You can respond, but we're not going to get into debate.
Just some factual information. In the projected budget, we reduced the administrative staff by 10%. And if you look at the ratio of administrators to students and teachers, just to give you an example, looking at span of control, if I look at the high school, each of those administrators are responsible for a minimum of 24 people as far as span of control is concerned, not to mention the students that are involved in the school. The numbers are even higher at the elementary level. So when you look at supervision and evaluation of staff, not only teachers, but assistants, it has a significant impact and there is a need for it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nowicki?
Hi, Deb Nowicki. Firstly, I want to thank you all for being here and the job you do. I've been on the Budget Committee. I know how difficult it is, and thank everyone for coming here tonight. I want to give an insider view to this. I substitute teach in the Londonderry School, and today I substitute taught in the Derry School. The Derry taxes are much higher than Londonderry. Can I go this way? Okay. And I can tell you the class size, I teach at the middle school in both communities. The class size in Derry with the higher tax is much smaller. The average class that I teach at the middle school in Londonderry can go from 22 to 27 students as it currently stands right now. We have a theory that we impress on all our school systems, and that is that no child is left behind. I also believe that every child should have the opportunity to move forward. And you have to ask yourself, with 27 students in a class as it is right now, my question to you is, how could you possibly cut staff? 27 students, middle school, short attention span, keeping their attention for a class, 10 classes a day. That's number one. Number two is we do pride ourselves on the quality of our school system, the quality of our students. And as you saw at the beginning presentation, the result of that quality and what 99 point whatever percent graduating. That takes quality teachers. And I sit in those student-teacher classrooms for break as teachers sit there in fear of will they lose their job. And if you think it's easy for any teacher, that's like people every day going to their job saying, will today be the day I'm going to get cut? That's tough for teachers to go in and concentrate in those classrooms, yet they go in there, positive attitude, and teach your children and my child every day. Okay? That's a tough feat. I think if we want to bring in quality teachers and retain quality teachers, I think we need to have quality benefits and salary to keep those quality teachers. I don't think we should be fear-based for our teachers, nor fear-based for our children. My question that I do have is, right now, oh, Nate's leaving, but perhaps one of you can answer. Right now, the federal government is looking at future cuts. One of them, for example, is a $3 billion cut in fuel assistance. I'll wait for Nate. Nate, the federal government's cutting left and right now. They're going to be cutting more grants. That's part of the reason why we're here, right? I know you looked at the conservative side of this budget. Do you think that there's a possibility that it's even going to go deeper? We can't predict the federal government, but right now there's a lot of changes in the wind that they could conceivably cut it further, correct?
I would anticipate that we wouldn't be receiving more money from the federal government. The issue really at hand is the level of the economy and the adequacy money that we'll be receiving from the state. That's probably the more pertinent issue. The Ed Jobs grant of $440,000 plus, we're using to pay for 10 staff members projected for next fiscal year. And as I had mentioned earlier, we'll have to wait and see what happens with the adequacy money at the state level and the funding over the next biennium.
And do we have some kind of backup funds should that occur?
Unlike school districts in the state of New Hampshire, are not allowed to carry over a fund balance. So if we estimate, for instance, that if we have an appropriation of $63 million and we expend that account by $100,000 and we have additional revenues come in, so in the last year or two, because of the major effort we've had on Medicaid reimbursement, we've come in with additional money. Let's say that's another $100,000 just to make life easy. That additional $200,000 goes to offset the tax rate for the following fiscal year. We can't hold it. The only way you can garner some of that money is if you create a special trust, like we have a special ed trust fund or a maintenance trust, and in the warrant you say X number of dollars from a fund balance may be transferred into that trust. Otherwise, we cannot carry money over from one fiscal year to the next. Federal government promised when they put an IDEA in that they would fund it at a certain level. Several years ago, I did a quick and dirty analysis, and if they had funded to the full level, we'd be getting an additional $1 million a year in revenue. That's not happening.
Thank you very much.
Gotta make a motion.
I have a very quick question.
State your name, please.
Tony DeCesso, Winterwood Drive. My question is to the board. What I didn't see in the presentation was legal fees. What has been spent to date in legal fees with the pending suit against the district, and what is anticipated in fees going forward, and during that decision process, were potential positions affected by that increase in potential legal fees?
Could somebody answer as pertains to the budget?
This year, so far, regarding your particular question, going back to August, the legal fees have been about $17,800, $9,000 and change directly related to the court case, and the remaining part was research and legal work and backup on a number of questions that had arisen on the quorum from August forward to that point in time. It has not impacted recommendations that we've made for next year in the budget.
Thank you. Mr. Farmer.
Brian Farmer, 106 Chase Road. Some people might have referred to me in an email as the boogeyman who's coming here to slash the budget by $1 million, that was some part of a plan or a plot, that I'm a henchman for another person who's since left the room. I'm here to refute all of that. There's no plot or plan, unless somebody else out here has one, to reduce this budget by $1 million and cut all these programs. If you're here because you were frightened by that email, good for you, because you're here. If you're here because you saw the cuts that were being made by the school board and you were worried and concerned about that, good for you, because you're here. You now own the room. Not anybody else, not these people up here. The moderator can make rules. As you heard Mr. Young say, you can override the moderator. You own the room. If you like this budget, you can move it. Somebody else asked a question earlier. If you don't want any further changes, can you just get up and leave now and you're done? Yes, that is absolutely 100% true. You can get up and leave the room and it's done. All right? The moderator has the rules. I think there are a couple people here who have suggested that they want to talk. I've heard some shouts to move the question. I would urge you to do that. I just have one further comment. Steve, due respect and everything, a person asked you if people voted for the default budget, what would happen? I would offer the opinion, and I think it might be the opinion of a number of people in this room, that voting for the default budget is a repudiation of the cuts that are in the school district's budget. If that budget from the school district was higher from the default, and I know it's not been that way in quite a long time, voting for the default budget would be a repudiation of that budget. I would suggest that if people in this room go to the polls and vote for the default budget, they are telling you they do not want these positions cut. They do not want special ed impacted. They do not want the teachers' aides going out of the room. They do not want a change in the services that they see today. Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Young.
Rather than leave that for all of us to wonder about, someone in this room right now could walk up to the moderator with a motion to amend the budget. I know many of you haven't participated in this, but that's the regulations and the way it works. Those are the rules that the moderator set down. So I think to do a wild guess, straw man approach, that we'll have to say, gee, they voted for the default budget, so they must want all these positions back in. You can, right now, do a motion to an amend, and we'll know exactly what you want. And since I was asked a question by the gentleman, Brian Farmer, did you sue the school district?
We're not going to get into that part of where we are. We're not. I will rule the discussion out of order. We're discussing the budget, nothing more.
Thank you.
That's out of order.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, wait, let me, yes?
When you're ready.
Yep, you're recognized.
Bob Spiegelman, Windsor Boulevard. I would like to amend this budget. I am very concerned about a number of the cuts. Specifically, I'd like to address school to career. School to careers in a program, actually Mark Oswald and I were the first co-chairs.
The way we do it is you say, I move to amend it by doing
X, raising it, lowering it, whatever it is.
Raising it the appropriate amount to reinstate the 2 positions in the career office. I don't know that number. You guys will have to help me out with that. I'm going to guess it's somewhere $125,000, but that's just a guess. And if after counting the votes there are no longer 500 of us here, which is possible, I would ask the school board to consider this and to make their own recommendation and to vote it in if there's a solid majority that does not reach 500.
Do you have a number?
Bob, if I understand,
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. We're just, you asked for what that number is, and somebody is about to give it to us.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said it.
Get in line. You can amend it more.
Yep.
107. 107.
No. Just so while we're getting a number, everybody understands the way the budget works in the state of New Hampshire, what you are doing is just changing the bottom line. In other words, that's the only thing that's changing. So if this is a $100,000 item, what you're really doing is changing the bottom line by $100,000.
So you want a number?
Yes.
It's 107,912.
107,912. So,
I would like to ask to amend the budget by 107,912.
By raising
the budget, that amount.
Okay,
In the hope
and
that
that
the
is
board, in its wisdom, will decide to reinstate
Okay,
this.
that is the motion before us, seconded by Ann Gaffney.
Point of order.
Yes.
Bob, one of the questions, you said that if it doesn't pass here because that 500 isn't here, the board does it. Our option of increasing the budget or decreasing the budget stopped when the question was read. We have to have the amendments on the books prior to the start of the discussion. Am I correct?
Say it again.
If my understanding is that
If the board is moving it, it does.
right. So we
But
had
if somebody in the audience, it's a different story.
right. The board cannot add money to the budget at this moment or subtract money from the budget from this moment.
Any from this moment on.
Exactly. From the time the time the moderator read the article, our options were limited at that point.
And could the board on its own amend a different article to include this money?
No. If you read the article, it's a very specific. We raise and appropriate money for a specific article. If we put money in there, DRA would knock us down on that issue.
Well, shame on me for not knowing that ahead of time. So, thank you.
Okay. So before us on the floor is a motion to raise the school board budget by $107,912. Mr. Robinson.
I guess this is a point of order. Mr. Spiegelman, before you go away, I'm looking at a budget that has 4 lines listed as school to career, school to community. Are you talking specifically about high school, or are you looking to include middle school and AE? I guess that's adult education?
Well, I was thinking about high school in terms of the opportunities kids get out in the workforce. I don't know if you remember the numbers, but youth employment is at its lowest number in the last 30 years in terms of percentage. So any help we can give to our students in terms of learning what it's like to work, getting them into the workforce, getting them skills. I wanted to include the in-service sessions we have, people coming from the communities into school to talk about careers and the appropriate high school curriculum.
Okay, so that would be 1 full-time position at the high school and 1 half-time, 4-hour-a-day position at the high school. I just want to make sure.
I believe so.
We have the numbers you're thinking of. Thank you.
All right. The question is on the amendment. Is there any further discussion of this particular amendment? The way we do it is we take an amendment, we deal with the amendment, it's up or down, and then we do something else. Mr. Brown. Yes. A point of order, a quorum count has been asked. We will now conduct a quorum count. All right. Hold for, no. This is going to actually happen fairly fast, so just 1 second.
No. Mr. Moderator?
Okay, yes?
Did we reach the quorum amounts?
Yes, we are over the quorum.
Okay.
Okay, the way we're going to do this, all right, is everybody has one of these little ballots. Whoops. Except you. Except me. Not the card. No, we're not doing with the card. We are doing it with you. We're handed a ballot. These, okay? The way we're going to do it is we're going to have a box in front. We're going to have a couple of boxes. If we have 500 in here, we have a quorum. If we have less than 500, we don't. We're going to do ballot A. And hold 1 second. We're going to set up 2 boxes. Come on by, drop it in. And I remind anybody, if you vote somebody else's, you are committing a crime, and it is a felony.
Oh. You just drop it in, they're going to count them. You asked for it.
No, his gets voted up and down. Yeah. No. And it's going to end because we don't have quorum. I'm sure we don't. Yeah, they left. Yeah. You're just counting it. Okay. All you're doing is you're dropping your A ballot in the ballot box. If at the end of the day we have 500, we have a quorum. If we have 499, we don't.
Oh, I'm ready to do something. I'm in the way. I'm sorry.
Yes, we're amending, right? One way, or where are we going?
Yeah.
This is amazing.
Amazing.
It's good theater.
Absolutely amazing. It really is. This is one of the most interesting things I've seen since I've been doing this. It is. It is. I should pay you to be here. You would. Who's going to pay us tonight? I'm paying you to be here because this is fascinating.
107. So Gordon, I do have to say you're raising your hourly fee. No, I'm paying them. He's paying us.
Yeah.
Okay, you got the SPED director at what school?
It's killing me right now. It's killing me.
Activity, 82,505.
We need traffic cops.
82,505.
We're not going down that way.
87,705. High school, school activity, 91,608. Got your SPED director.
Yeah.
108,695.
Yep. For those of you who are wondering, it's just take your A ballot, stick it in one of the boxes. 500, we have a quorum. 499, we don't.
Thank you. Yeah, they feed us.
Yeah.
By the way, I've been carrying those gloves for 2 weeks.
Well, I know.
Of course. Hi, how you doing? Nice.
All right, where's the box?
We address that. Superintendent addresses and we look at it, okay? And what you're going to see is that they're somewhere between 18, free for the lower grades, 25 for 4th and 5th, and we try to stay 25, 26 for the middle school, and then the high school varies because of all the class sizes, but a minimum of about 10 or 11. There may be classes bigger, but when they get into like the humanities class where they have a history English, it gets bigger when they have 2 teachers in the room. Yes.
Like a town. Everybody says on.
But they did say that at the very beginning, that if we leave, it has to stay in high
I know, you really are.
Is this thing on? I think it is.
I think we will tonight. Hey, I'm not amending that one. I think this one for Frankie is more important. I love my job and all, but that's what I did. No, next time.
Right, I know you wanted to spar. You want to go.
You guys doing that? What would you do? I love watching it. Yeah. I love it. It's great. You don't put. I think it's just a count, isn't it?
Okay.
I put an X anyway, but all right. Okay. No, I think just putting it in, I thought.
I can use social studies as lessons as that as you get older. And then social studies isn't going to social studies isn't going to change as you go along. And that's the logic that they use. They want to spend more time.
I'm next. Well, that's, if we don't have 500, I'm going home.
Can you do our assistant superintendent, Andy Corey?
Oh, yeah, I saw you. I was like, these got to be here.
Unless there's not
150.
If we could ask that you sit down after you've deposited your ballot.
Every time I see these guys at the beach, he's half dressed, you know? And I'm sure everybody was going,
Excuse me. If I could ask that you sit down after you've deposited your ballot. We want to make sure that everyone has deposited their A ballot. The only way we can do that is if you remain in your seats after you've voted, okay?
yeah. Looks like Tasha.
That's what they.
You can't be specific.
I wouldn't as my 1/5. I wouldn't, but I would take a lot of crap from a voter.
It's okay.
Figure that out.
Oh, someone.
You're not going to. I know so many people walk that.
Give me a call, and then we'll sit down and talk about it and we'll a cup of coffee and we'll see where we go. But
well, I think they'll take some of it back. Yeah, I do. I don't know.
No, school board meeting. If you want to get involved, one of the things we do is we have a curriculum meeting.
Maybe they're getting closer to
advisory board,
level
parents are on
funding.
it. Right. And we have that on an annual basis.
I
Tell
think that's
Andy that
part
you're
of this
joining it.
energy, but I also think it's going to be part of the energy tomorrow. I mean, I think people are truly aware of that.
Curriculum committee, that's correct.
Well, the only thing is,
and that's where we'll form committees.
Hello,
good morning. Look at
I'm in the way again.
So it's not like you want to restore all the money. You have to think about
Bad spot for the mic.
how much you need.
At its best.
Yeah, right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Last call. Last call. Put your A ballot in. Last call. Where's the other box? Whoop.
And I'm worried about getting 3 more years for this.
Yeah, same as I'm.
Last call. One box is on the side there. One box is here. 500 makes a quorum. 499, no quorum. All right. Last call. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Whoop. Wait a second. Yeah, put yours in. Get it in there.
Well, if they come in, we can call another quorum count. Yes, you can.
I will do that in a...
The only long one we got is my union one, and I'm going to keep it as short as I
I'll
can.
go into it. Okay.
No, I guess it doesn't, but I bet it does.
All right. Last call. All right. Quorum count is over. Could you please sit down? Could everybody please sit down? Order, please. Order, please.
Order in the circus.
Okay. Okay, let me first explain an item or two, a procedure, and then we will move on for a second. Okay, what happens now is we do a count. If we have a quorum, we then move to a ballot on the amendment, and 5 people have asked that it be done by secret ballot. Okay? And it's been given to me ahead of time, so it would be done by a secret ballot. So if we have a quorum, we will then move to a vote on the amendment, and it will be by secret ballot. Okay, that's step 1. Step 2, in the interest of moving things along tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to, you all can get up again later. We are going to suspend discussion on Article 2, and we're going to move on to the next article. Whoops. Hello. Whoop.
You're back.
We're going to move on to the next article and at least have a discussion of it while they are while they're counting. Okay. So at this point, we are going to move on to Article 3. Article 3. Shall the voters of the Londonderry School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between Londonderry School District and the Londonderry support staff, and further to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,959 for the 2011-2012 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional cost items attributable to the increase in the salaries and benefits over those paid at current staffing levels in the prior fiscal year. The agreement calls for the following increases in salary: 212-13, estimated cost $117,138, fiscal year 213-14, $120,067. Mr. Young.
So moved, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Robinson.
Second that motion.
Mr. Young.
The item we're talking about this evening and that we'll be voting on at the polls is the support staff. It's AFSCME Local 1801, and in this bargaining agreement, we have 312 positions. The highlights of the negotiations, we appreciated the union coming to the table this year on this, and we spent 20 or more hours working with them and came up with the following options. We're going to be eliminating the salary scale, what's called steps, going to a COLA only. The advantage of this to the district is if the present laws of New Hampshire stand and we have an evergreen process in place, COLAs are not evergreened where steps are, so we won't have to have an evergreen contract. This is an evergreen contract this year, so if you were to vote against this at the polls, they would get the exact same amount of increase that we have in this contract anyways, even if you voted against it. And that increase is an average of 1.67%. The COLA increase for the following years is a minimum of 2.5 and a maximum of 4.5 based on the Boston CPI. We have some wording changes, and the wording changes give us the ability to have the employees reviewed by the district office on whether or not they would be able to apply for another position. The present contract requires that they must be interviewed, so they wouldn't necessarily have to be interviewed on every single application. The personal leave, the employees will be required to give a written reason for any personal days that they're taking on Mondays or Fridays to cut down on any abuse of that. The temporary employees, anybody working for 90 days or half a year, because the school district is a 180-day year, they would be required to join the union or to pay union fees. We have one other item, and that is there's presently a situation where certain employees in the high school get a 50 cents extra an hour in their pay. The union has agreed to take that as a lump sum over 2 years, so that 50 cents an hour over that 2-year period would disappear. So years 3 and beyond, we won't be paying that extra 50 cents an hour, and we're not spending any more money than we would if we didn't just continue with that contract anyways. So the board would ask your support on this at the polls.
Thank you. Mr. Jorgensen for the Budget Committee.
Yes, the Budget Committee voted in favor of this particular warrant article with 3 people in favor and 2 abstaining. Thank you.
Is there any discussion on Article 3? Seeing none, Article 3 moves on to the ballot. We now move on to Article 4. Article 4, shall the voters of the Londonderry School District, if Article 3 is defeated, authorize the school board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 3 cost items only. Mr. Herman.
So moved, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Robinson.
Second that motion.
Mr. Herman.
Thanks, John. What Article 4 is saying is simply that if Article 3 should fail at the polls on the 8th, it authorizes the board to call a single special meeting to address cost items, and essentially what would happen is if it does fail, we'd go back to the table with the union, and this is just saying that we can call a special meeting at our option to have that one specific cost item passed. So,
thank you. Is there any discussion on Article 4? Seeing none, Article 4 moves on to the ballot. We now go on to Article 5, but before I will announce the results of the quorum. 446 people having answered the quorum call. A quorum is not present. An amendment is not in order at this time. We now go back to Article 2. And is there any further discussion on Article 2? No, I'm not going to, not now. Not now. We now go on to Article 2. Any further discussion on Article 2? Mr. Farmer.
Point of order, sir. I would just like
Could we have order, please?
I would just like everybody to know that in answer to the question, am I one of the people who has sued the school district? Yes, I am.
Out of order.
I brought the suit
out of
forward.
order. You are out of order.
I understand that.
You are. Officer, if he keeps speaking, please remove him from the hall. You are out of order.
he wants a photo.
You are out of order. Officer,
your rights
remove
are being
him from
trampled
the
on.
hall.
You are not allowed to vote on any of these issues from now on
I
because
want
the
him
quorum is not met.
He's out of order.
Thank you.
Out of the
I'll get my
hall.
jacket. Thank you.
All right. We now continue on Article 2. Is there any further discussion of Article 2? Seeing none, Article 2 is on the ballot on March 8th. We now go on to Article 5. Article 5.
Have John, have the system moderator read Article 5.
Moderator, can you read Article 5?
Article 5. Article 5, shall the voters of the Londonderry School District vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Londonderry School District and the Londonderry custodians, AFSCME Council 93, Local 1801, and further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $54,767 for the 2011-2012 fiscal year. Such sum representing the additional cost items attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits over those paid at current staffing levels in the prior fiscal year. The agreement calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits. Fiscal year 2012-2013, $56,137. Fiscal year 2013-2014, $57,539. Mr. Campo?
Mr. Moderator?
Yes.
I'd like to move that article.
Sorry.
I second that. Article 5 is the contract that the school board has negotiated with the Londonderry custodians, the local ASME 801 unit. This contract is a 3-year contract that maintains in place the same agreement that we had before. It's strictly a cost of living increase, and it's the limits on it are similar to the support union of 2.5 to 4.5. Currently, we're estimating that to be for this year at 2%, so that would be a 2.5% increase. There's no changes. There's some minor wording changes to it, but there's no other changes to this contract. In the past negotiations, the custodial staff has made several concessions to the school district, including reducing the employer's health insurance contribution from 85% to 80%, reducing sick days from 15 to 10, eliminating the custodial sick bank, and also changing some wording on the janitor to custodian that allowed the custodians to be part of the snow removal crew, which has saved the district money over time. Thank you.
Mr. Jorgensen?
Mr. Oswald?
Budget Committee supports this Article 5-0.
Seeing no further discussion, Article 5 shall be placed on the ballot for March 8, 2011. Article 6. Shall the voters of the Londonderry School District, if Article 5, the Londonderry Custodians, AFSCME Local 1801 bargaining agreement is defeated, authorize the school board to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 5 cost items only. Mr. Robinson?
I move Article 6.
Second.
Since there's no budget impact, this does not go to the Budget Committee. I'm sorry, you want to speak?
Ladies and gentlemen, Article 6 is similar to the article that we discussed briefly a few minutes ago. If Article 5 were to be defeated at the poll, Article 6 would authorize the school board to call for one special meeting to address Article 5, a new attempt at a contract, seeking approval for that from the voters of the district. That's about all there is to this article.
Seeing no discussion, Article 6 shall be placed on the ballot for March 8, 2011. Article 7. Shall the voters of the Londonderry School District vote to accept and receive federal grants and other such funds to support the school lunch program and federal projects? Further, to raise and appropriate such funds in a special revenue fund as follows. School lunch program, $1,358,000. Federal projects, $2,227,267. Such fund to be self-supporting through local, state, and federal revenue sources. Mr. LaFerriere.
I make a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
Mr. Moderator, the purpose of this article is to grant authority to the school board to accept and receive grant funds and other funds such as income from food sales. The funds received support the lunch program and professional staff supported through the federal IDEA special education grant. Both programs are self-supporting and have no impact on the local or state educational tax rate. Failure to approve this would disallow the school board from accepting grant funds from the federal government and force the local budget to fund the 2 mandated programs. So this would have a local impact if we did not vote on this at the March elections. The article calls for an estimated $1,358,000 for the district lunch program and $2,272,267 for the federal IDEA IDEA grant and Ed Jobs grant.
Thank you. Mr. Jorgensen?
Yes, the Budget Committee voted in favor of this 5-0.
Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, Article 7 shall be placed on the ballot for March 8th, 2011. Article 8. Shall the voters of Londonderry School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $275,000 to replace in the school district's expendable general fund trust fund. The district's expendable general fund trust fund was previously established and approved at the March 1995 school district meeting.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move Article 8.
Mr. Young?
Second.
Mr. Robinson?
Ladies and gentlemen, Article 8 is a mechanism that we use to put aside money each year for, as it says, one-time expenses. If a boiler needs to be replaced, if a roof leaks, other things that can be done using a smaller amount of money that doesn't have to come to you for particular needs or a bond article or something such as that. The idea basically is if we have this money in place, we can keep up with maintenance on smaller items rather than defer them or put them all in one big number that we ask you to support at a later date. It simply facilitates operation of the district and allows us to deal with needs as they come up. Thank you.
Mr. Jorgensen? Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion?
Jan McLaughlin, Apollo Road. I know that we can't change any of the numbers here. I'm just a little concerned at the small amount that is set in this article. My kids went to Matthew Thornton School, and I'm concerned that Matthew Thornton School does not have sprinklers, and I'm concerned that a track was refinished before sprinklers were put in an elementary school. So I'm concerned that there's not enough money to do those kinds of things. And I know it's, when the list is there for the kinds of things, roofs, boilers, and things like that, I understand the purpose for it. It just seems like we depleted that fund awfully quickly, and it doesn't seem like enough money is going in to do some of those things that we needed to do.
Yes, Mr. Robinson.
You want to take it? Ma'am, the one thing I'd like to say is we are putting sprinklers in Matthew Thornton next year. It is being funded through a different line item in the budget. So that work is taking place and will not be covered by this $275,000, which, as you said, would not be enough to handle that.
Mr. Jorgensen?
Yes, the Budget Committee voted in favor of this 5-0.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, Article 8 shall be placed on the ballot for March 8, 2011. Article 9. Shall the voters of Londonderry School District vote to raise and appropriate the sum up to the sum of $50,000 to transfer into the school district's building maintenance fund, established and appropriated in the March 1995 school district meeting. The appropriation will be offset with revenue from the unreserved fund balance June 30th, 2011. Such funds would be used to cover the cost of general maintenance in the district's buildings and grounds.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Campo?
On this article here, as the previous article, one of the things that we were noticing that was coming up here, and Jan mentioned it over, is that our buildings are getting older. Some of our buildings, like Matthew Thornton, is over 60 years old. We have a maintenance plan to replace roofs on a regular basis. We look at a 5 and a 10 and a 15-year plan for paving, roofs, boilers, all those big items that we normally handle around our own houses. One of the items that came up by the administration, and they're supposed to give us ideas, is potentially come up with a bond issue in the future to pay for all these items. The board was not receptive to this at the moment because we've been doing it through the maintenance trust, and the maintenance trust has been going on for 10 or 15 years, and it's going to continue to go on. But we realized we need some additional funds in that account in order not to go to a bond issue to pay for its general maintenance costs. So what we're recommending is that if we have a surplus at the end of the year that would normally go back to the voters, what we're asking is that we be allowed to put $50,000 in the maintenance trust so we can pay for the roofs, the pavement, the boilers, the window replacement that we're doing, that we have to do. That's in our 5-year plan and 7-year plan. It's just, we think that it'll be cheaper to the voters by paying cost as you go instead of paying interest on this money and doing a bond and still having the maintenance trust, because it wouldn't cover it all that money. So that's what we're looking to do here, and ask the voters to support this article.
Thank you, Mr. Campo. Mr. Roberts, I'm sorry, Mr. Jorgensen?
Yes, the Budget Committee voted against this amendment 2-3.
Hi, Ann Gaffney, 28 Tokenell Drive. My question is, if there is no fund balance, what happens?
There's no money that's put into the account. You need the fund balance in order to put money in the account. This is just a surplus over what we've put into our budget already as what we expect to be the fund balance. This is if we have unanticipated revenues.
Okay, so the wording, the appropriation will be offset with the revenue from undesignated fund balance assumes that there must be fund balance to do this at all.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? If not, Article 9 will be on the ballot on March 8th. Thank everybody for coming. It is Mr. Clark.
Ladies and gentlemen, 508 people came into this building today compared to 230-some last year. I am very much appreciate that you all came, but what is more important, 508 of you, unfortunately, by the charter, have to stay to have any vote. So next year, come earlier. There's lots of babysitting down there. Bring your children. They can watch a good movie and also be taken care of otherwise. And do it again. But 508 is a world record. And
thanks.
And I'm glad of that.
Mr.
So
Young.
Clap yourself.
And then Mr. Campo.
Okay.
And we'd like to thank the Honor Society and the Student Council for doing that babysitting. We appreciated it very much. And I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. We're adjourned.